We are in the middle of summer, but if you think it would be a good idea to jump into the river, lake, and sea, I'm sure that's because you haven't watched my first installment about water ghosts yet. If you've missed it, make sure you check it out. Links in the description. Water ghosts are ghosts lurking under the water, often the souls of drowned victims themselves, and waiting to pull unsuspecting swimmers down, or at least so it is thought in Korea. If you are still not convinced, here are 3 more allegedly true stories about water ghosts from Korea, probably less typical than the first 4 stories, but just as scary. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. Before they got married, my uncle and his wife, then a girlfriend, took a trip together. The girlfriend's family was very conservative and strict with her and would never let her spend a night away from home. But these lovebirds made an elaborate plan. She made an excuse it was a very important retraining trip from her work, even falsifying an official-looking document to back her story up to her parents. On my uncle's part, he begged and bribed his older brother to lend him his car. You see, his older brother cared so much of his car that anybody getting a ride from him would be asked to brush the soles of their shoes before allowed in. Now you can imagine what kind of ass-licking it would have taken for my uncle to make his brother let go of his car. So finally took my uncle and girlfriend their merry way to a seaside town on the west coast. It was perfect October weather, just pleasant. After settling down in their lodging, they went out to find somewhere nice to have dinner. Fortunately, it being an off-season and on a weekday, there were plenty of places, and not long after, they sat at a nice seafood sashimi restaurant facing the beach. After a couple of drinks over dinner, they both got nicely tipsy. My uncle would say he felt like on the top of the world looking at smiling rosy cheeks of his beloved, and in anticipation for the night together. Yikes! On the way back to their lodging, they took a walk along the beach. But then the girlfriend saw something in the sea and started pointing it out. It indeed looked like somebody was struggling caught up among waves. Girlfriend urged my uncle to do something. He was reluctant to jump into the dark night sea and looked around, but there were none else on the off-season beach. In the end, he told girlfriend to run back to the restaurant to alert the others, and ran across the sandy beach and into the water. The drowning man, to my uncle's surprise, was not even at the deep water, just about as high as my uncle's shoulder it was. Uncle grabbed the guy's shoulder from behind and started pulling him off, but he wouldn't budge. My uncle is a tall and broad guy, and yet this comparatively slight-looking guy wouldn't move an inch despite of my uncle's best effort. All the while, the drowning guy kept frantically struggling, waving and slapping about his arm over the water, blinding my uncle's views and just making things even more difficult. In the end, Uncle decided to first knock him off and carry on pulling him off the water. But then, he noticed something odd. This guy, while waving his arms about, his legs were not moving at all, as if piled stuck on the spot. Baffled, Uncle was about to let go of the guy, but then, in a matter of seconds, the guy turned around and grabbed around my uncle's neck. Only then he could see the guy's face. Blue and blotted, just like a drowned man left in the water for days. This small man's grip was inhumanly strong, and with that strength started pushing my uncle into the water. Despite all the fight back, his head went under the water, and only then could he see that the guy didn't have the lower body at all, as if sawed off clean. Uncle was thinking, "This is it, I'm going to die," and began to go limp. Suddenly he felt some force lifting him up back on the surface, followed by a hard slapping on his cheeks. The pain snapped him back and found the restaurant owner shaking him up while his girlfriend standing behind on the beach, all tears and panicked. The restaurant owner managed to drag Uncle off onto the beach, and girlfriend cried at him, "What were you doing? Why were you holding on to that?" My uncle, confused, followed what her finger was pointing at, and there was some sort of log floating, with some white fabric tied to at the end of it. Girlfriend explained when she was back with the restaurant owner, Uncle was struggling with the log in the water and was about to go under. My uncle could not understand. He did clearly see the face of the drowning guy. The restaurant owner grumbled to them that one should not look into the night sea too long, that it was a well-known taboo among seafarers. My uncle started to feel shiver, and he gathered all drenched himself and still crying girlfriend back to their lodging. As they entered through the lobby of the lodging, the owner, glancing casually over the small window separating them from his office, called after them, "Hey, I can't allow you in. You know better than that, eh?" Already exhausted and confused enough, Uncle was about to lose temper. The owner saw them checking in earlier and did welcome with a smile. Whatever the heck was he on about now? "You brought the third guy behind you. You can't have another guest," the owner said. Uncle and girlfriend exchanged frightened look. My uncle argued back, "What third guy? There's no another one here." The owner poked his head out through the window and looked around the lobby and asked where the other guy was gone. Uncle shouted back that there was just them two all the while, and dragged now practically panicked girlfriend up the stairs, and heard the owner saying to himself behind them, "That's odd. I definitely saw 3 of them." By then, their supposed romantic getaway was all ruined. Girlfriend insisted that she didn't want to stay there any longer, so they ended up, after a quick shower, packing up and drove back home through the night. This horrible experience, nevertheless, seems to have bound them even closer, and my uncle would still say that he would have become a sea ghost were it not for her. And she in return said she found it cute to see this burly guy going all scared. Oh well, good for them. The year was 1998, and I was 6. I visited my uncles in the countryside for summer holiday. After plenty of watermelons, grapes, and chicken from the local farms and orchards, one bright sunny day we all went swimming in the reservoir with uncles and cousins. I must point out swimming in the reservoir is not a good idea at all. Water may be nice and warm. You take one step in, then the water may come to your ankle. Take another step, then the water gets a half-meter deeper. Another step, then you are knee-deep. And then another step, the water is suddenly above your head. Anyway, I was so young, my uncle made me wear a life vest. I'd never been in such a deep water, and I was enjoying myself so much. I was floating around about 10 meters away from the shore, and I lifted my arms high to wave at my uncles when my little body slipped through the vest and into the water. I didn't panic at all. I was going under, facing the surface of the water, and I thought how beautiful it was how the sunlight twinkled on the surface of the water. I could also feel some underwater plant gently tickling my back. Next thing I thought was I was going to die, though I was just 6. I was wearing a goggle which kept my vision clear, and I saw my youngest uncle diving towards me and then suddenly shooting back up, leaving me behind. That was the last thing I remember before I woke up again in the hospital. I heard it was the youngest uncle who rescued me. It was few years later that I returned to the countryside. I avoided the reservoir and played in the stream instead. At night, I heard my uncle screaming in his sleep. Grandma went to him and consoled him, saying, "It's already years ago. Hold yourself together, son." I was just told that he had a nightmare, and I didn't try to find out more. 12 years passed, and one day oldest uncle came to visit my family. Now that I was an adult too, and we shared a bottle together talking about the good old days. Then the uncle brought up the day I drowned in the reservoir. When the youngest uncle jumped in to rescue me, he saw a woman in the water behind me. She was standing straight in white dress and with her long hair floating all around. He shot back up to the surface then because of the unbelievable sight he had just seen. But because he could not let his little nephew just drown, he dived back, dragged me back to the shore, and fainted himself. He claimed that he saw a ghost in the water, but soon realized it might not have been. The villagers searched the spot with a fishing net and recovered a drowned body. It was tangled up in a fishing net and had signs of struggling to get free of it. Because of that trauma, my poor uncle apparently had recurring nightmares for years afterwards, comes the summer. I suddenly felt shiver running through my spine upon sudden realization that what gently tickled my back in the water might not have been underwater plants after all, but a dead woman's hair. A story from the town I used to live in as a child. The town was consisted with an industrial area separated by about 30-minute drive via a reservoir from the residential area. For the first few years when the industrial area was sparsely occupied and there were light traffic, things were just fine. But as the industrial area grew and the traffic increased at night times too, a problem started to occur. Cars would drive over the bank and into the reservoir, time after time. The curve around the reservoir wasn't even very sharp, and none were found drunk driving either. Those survived the accident would testify that they saw a strange woman on the spot. Indeed, a woman drowned about there in the past, and rumors started running wild among the inhabitants of the town. After a few people perished, the authority put a warning sign and extra street lamps on the spot. Still more people died, and they widened the road. Yet more people died, and they stationed patrol officer on the spot day and night. But the accidents continued, and so did the sightings of the strange woman. Many said they saw a woman beckoning them. Some said the road suddenly disappeared. Others said they heard ominous sound of laughter echoing around. It seemed hopeless, and people downright avoided driving through the spot at night. Until they filled in the reservoir completely. There were no more accidents afterwards. Human beat the freaking water ghost. Ha! Hi, it's Anthony here. Thank you very much for your listening. This was the second installment of my summer special. I hope it made you feel a tiny bit chilled. If you liked it, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and click the notification bell to help this new channel grow. Until the next, stay safe and take care.